and it's not naturally going to display anything on the screen, it's a good habit to print something out, just to simply say something like, file written successfully. Because otherwise people are just going to look at that and just kind of get that awkward feeling of, well, did it actually work? Or they might rerun it. That I hate doing something and not getting a confirmation back that it worked.
It's true. You're always sort of paranoid.
Yeah,
it didn't run properly.
Feeling uncomfortable. Yeah. So let's just go in and do that one more time. Now it tells me file written successfully. Cool. And then let's go ahead and open up our file again. And sure enough, we've got those two little lines.
Awesome. I just want to bring up a question that came up in the chat window.
Absolutely.
The question was, can you open a file for read and write at the same time? And the answer to the question, in fact, somebody actually already answered the question in the chat window, which is fabulous, but I wanted to highlight it here. Because not everybody's always going to see what's in the chat window. But yes, if you specify access mode of R+ for read plus, or W+ for write plus, that either of those modes will actually allow you to open a file for reading and writing. So you can do it in a single command if you want to.
And, kind of going back to what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago about, putting that in there to make it a little bit clear, W+ or R+. When I look at it, that wouldn't necessarily mean a whole lot to me.
You'd expect it to be like RW or something.
Yeah, exactly. So you could, again, go in and declare some form of a constant for that to help make your code more self-documenting. That one of the things that we talked about, again, all the way back at the beginning of the course was the concept of putting in comments. And comments are wonderful. And I don't in any way, shape, or form want to discourage you from writing comments. But one of the problems with comments is you're sometimes just describing the code when you could just modify your code a little bit and let the code describe itself. So in my case here, my code is describing itself. So rather than me having to say something like, mode equals W+, and then just going in and saying W+ means read write, instead what I could do is I could just simply leave it as read write. I could leave it as read write, and now my code is telling you what it's doing. So much cleaner than just putting in the comment. Okay, and I'm just going to go in and kind of clean things up a little bit. Perfect. All right. Now let's go back to slides here, and one of the biggest things that you'll frequently need to write out for a text file is CSV.
Oh, comma-separated variable files. We see those a lot. In fact, we literally just had a question in the Q&A, one of those nice lead-up moments where somebody said, what if I wanted to create a comma-separated variable file?
Yep.
Because you see that a lot in it's a very common file format.
Absolutely. Well, the answer is just kind of do it on your own.
Write a comma.
Exactly. Write in the comma. So you know what? Let's do this because we've got a couple of minutes here, and so you'll notice that just go in and put in the commas, and you'll notice that that is your challenge. Well, tell you what, I'm going to help you out a little bit here. That if you want to write out a CSV file, all that you need to do is just write it out. So let's just go in and say, for example, file write Susan, and we'll say 29.
Yeah.
And then right, 29.
That's right, 29.
Okay, and then we'll say Christopher, and then we'll go in and say, I'm going to, say 31.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go with 31. In any event, so I've just simply put in both of those, and then if I go in and hit start, it tells me again that it was written successfully out to the file, and if I go back to File Explorer, open this up, you're going to notice I forgot my...
you missed a comment.
I did.
Yeah.
\n. There we go. So you were really cooking here. Now let's go back and open up my file again. There we go. And now there is everything.
Nice.
Now what I want to do
would you want the spaces?
Spaces, not spaces, that's sort of up to you. I put them in just for a little bit more readability.
Because typically when I'm creating comma-separated var files, what I'm going to be using props, I don't usually have the spaces because then, I don't know, if I'm converting it to, when I read it back, sometimes I end up with a string that contains a space and I'm converting it to a number. Sometimes that causes weird wonky things. So
yeah.
I tend not to put spaces in, maybe a bit of personal preference, but I especially something like a number, I might not necessarily want spaces after the commas. Nice for readability here in the demo.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking afterwards.
Yeah. Kind of one of those little things. Okay. So what I'm doing here, kind of in the background, is let's do all files. Oh, that's why. Is it as demo.txt? You know what I'm going to do?
Do you want to open it in a different file extension?
Actually,
or
no.
a
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Is I'm going to update this to be CSV.
Sure.
That's really what it should be.
Usually, when you're creating comma-separated variable files,
Should be
CSV, they have an extension of CSV.
Let's go ahead and rerun it. And then now let's come back over here to Excel. There's my demo CSV. Let's open that up. And you'll notice that sure enough, and I'll kind of zoom in and make it a little easier for everybody to see here, you're going to notice that sure enough, Excel uses that as a CSV because at the end of it all, it's just a CSV.
Yep.
Now, to close all of this, I'm going to go one last step further. And that is, I'm going to go with a little bit of user input. So maybe, and I'll kind of keep it relatively simple here. I'm not going to worry too much about, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just sort of comment that. There we go.
Okay.
So let's go in and say data equals input. Please enter file info, and then let's go in and say file equals open, and then file name.
So now the user decides the file is going to be created.
Exactly. Mode equals write, and then let's go in and say file.write, and then, I thought I hit escape. I guess not. Write the data, and then file.close. Okay, so what you're going to notice is that I'm grabbing the data from the user, and then I'm going to write that out to the file. So let's go in and do that real quick. So we'll just go in, hit start. Please enter. I should have put a space, but that's okay. This is going to be in the file. Hit enter. Written successfully. And now let's go back to our text file, and that's going to be in the file.
Nice.
I know I kind of moved a little bit quickly through that, but I sort of did that on purpose because these are concepts that we've actually all already covered. And if we go back and take a look here, what you're going to notice, I didn't do anything fancy. I just simply used an input to get input in from the user. And then I just simply put that into a variable, and I wrote out a variable. So a lot of people were asking, especially like when you were doing your demo with list, could you have input in from the user? Could you have read that from a file, which I know you're going to be doing later? Could you have...
Could you take the values from a list and write them to a file?
Exactly, yeah. Could you do all of that? Could I, sit down and put together a for loop and do it that way? The answer to all of those questions is 100% yes. That if you've got a value and it can be represented in some way, shape, or form as a string, you can write it out. And can you loop through things and write all of those out? Absolutely. So bringing that back actually then to our challenge is to create that CSV file below. You can do this in numerous ways. That
you could have the user, if you want to practice user input entering things, have them enter it. If you want to make it a list and then write the values from the list to there, absolutely, lots of options.
Yeah, whatever it is that you want to do, and that's really the key that we want to highlight is that, as we've been going through this, we've been focused on what we've been teaching. So when Susan was doing lists, she was doing lists. When I was originally doing files, I was doing files. Does that mean that I can't combine that with skills that I've already learned? Absolutely not. That you can do loops and lists and inputs and files and all of those together.
Can I get you, before you sneak off on the lunch break, there was one question up came in the Q&A window that was a really good question. If you could go back to your code for just a second. Somebody noticed the fact that for your variables write and append, you put them in all uppercase.
Yes.
Do you want to explain that?
Sure. The reason that I put them into all uppercase is 100% convention. Convention is when you have a constant to put it into all uppercase letters. And really the whole concept of a constant is sort of like it means in English, constant never changes. And that's what we're looking for. So some people would call that a flag. I'm going to call it a constant. But typically those are going to be in all uppercase letters just to sort of differentiate them from a typical variable, where the word variable meaning that I'm going to expect it to change. So that's why I put it in all uppercase letters. But that's a great great question.
Yep.
And again, that kind of goes back to that whole formatting thing.
And it's not a rule. It's not
Nope.
something you have to do. It's, again, falling back to good programming practices.
Yep.
It's one of those conventions that a lot of programmers will use as a way of distinguishing between sort of a quick glance. I instantly know, oh, don't change the value of that. That's a constant.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. Cool. Well, now that we've seen how to write from files, let's eat.
Yes, let's take a break for a meal, and then you guys can work on the challenge if you want.
Exactly.
And see if you can create your first file using code.
Yep.
And then we'll come back and we'll learn how to read from files.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are going to show you the other side. So we will show you how to read. We're going to be back in about an hour. So we will see you guys then.
See you later.
All right. Well,
Hey.
welcome back. I'm full. I don't know if you're full.
I am re-energized and ready to go.
And I don't know if you're full, but in any event, welcome back. This is still Introduction to Programming using Python. Susan and I are back, of course, over there. I'm merely Christopher Harrison. And, we left off taking a look at how to write files. What do you think we might talk about next, Susan?
Seems to me there is a rather logical segue from that, which might be to talk about once you've written to a file, at some point you might want to be able to read it back again.
Well,
So, shall we jump in?
let's do it.
Let's start talking about how to read from files. One of the things about working with files, or, again, coming back to our issue of problem solving, writing things down is all well and good, but it doesn't help you if you can't read it again later. It's as simple as that. Making
Sometimes with my handwriting, I can't read it later.
Well, that's also important.
Yeah.
Actually, and strangely enough, it actually has its own parallels to programming. It's nothing like you write it in XML and somebody's expecting it as a CSV.
Yeah, exactly. Or, UTF-8 encoding. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
So there are equivalents to I can't read your handwriting in the programming world as well. So absolutely, it's essential that we have not only that we can write to a file, but we can read it back again when we need it. If you think about it, right, when you create a shopping list, you need to be able to read that shopping list later so you know what to buy. It's as simple as that. Making the shopping list doesn't help if you don't have it with you at the grocery store and you can't read it when you get there. Checking the number of guests you have on the guest list so you can see if you've got enough food. Looking up a phone number so you can call somebody. I mean, really, what is... Okay, there was this device we used to use years ago. It was this thing, it was a big book full of names and numbers. It was called a phone book.
I'm sorry, you totally lost me there.
know.
A what?
Phone book, yeah. Not so common anymore. But, so what is a phone book really? It's just a list of names and phone numbers. So, but it's one thing if they write it down, but if you don't have it to look up again, how do all those websites look up phone numbers for you work? Guess what? They're probably reading that information from a database or from a file. The same one that was used to print the phone book beforehand. So in programs, we're often writing code that will read information that's saved inside a file. If you think about an e-reader, if you like to read books on your tablet, you can nice little apps you can install on your Surface and so on. When you start up an ebook, you don't have to start over from the beginning of the book every time you go back to read your book. It'll remember what chapter you were on, what page you were on, so that when you go back to start your book again, it just picks up where you left off. How do you think your program remembers that? What it does is it's probably creating a little file on your tablet that says, hey, by the way, in this book, they were on this page. So when they start up again, the program will actually say, quick, go check the file that says what book they were reading and what page they were on. And that way, we'll know where to bring them back to in the code.
Yep.
When you play a video game, I really find it very annoying when video games don't remember where I finished. It's really annoying when you play a video game and you have to keep restarting from level 1 every single time, especially these video games that are more story mode and things like that. You're playing Halo or something like that. It's really nice when it remembers, oh, I had passed this level and I'd achieved the following and I'd earned these weapons and so on. So that way, when I start up the game again, there's probably a little file that was created. So my program has to be able to read that file and remember what level was I on, what weapons did I collected, how many hit points do I have, and all that kind of good stuff. Yes, I am.
What your charisma roll was.
Oh, wow. All right, there we go. Yep. And that's gotten way more complicated now. There's all these new modifiers.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's changed. My kids got into that, and everything's changed. I can't even
when
figure it out
I was
anymore.
your age.
Yeah, but I'm only 29.
But you're only 29.
Yeah.
I think I said I was 32.
Version 1.0, I think I was playing.
Yeah.
Luckily,
Yeah,
the dice are
old
still the same.
red book.
So my kids can at least use the same dice I used when I was
There you go. Yeah, family heirlooms. You pass your dice down from one generation to the next. All right.
Absolutely. Anyway, but back to the code. The other thing that's really cool, even if you're not creating a file, the other thing that's really interesting and has become a very popular trend in the last about 5 to 6 years has been the concept of open data. And open data is really quite cool because with open data, basically what's happened is with the advent of smartphones and tablets and so on, a lot of people have started creating their own apps. And you see this happening more and more these days. And you may have noticed apps that you get that tell you when the bus is coming, or that tell you where all the road closures are, or maybe it's just, I said, it's amazing the number of apps. Or you can get apps that'll tell you what happened on the last health inspection at the restaurant you just went to. I know New York City, there you can actually get a data file that will tell you the results of all the health inspections. It's a matter of public record. So what a lot of governments will do is they will make the files where they stored the results available to the public. And for programmers, this is gold. You can do such cool stuff with open data because basically what they're saying is, here's a file, read it, do stuff with it. So you could get the file from the New York City, that says, here's the health inspections of all the restaurants. And then you, once you're done this module, would be able to read that file. And you know how to search values in a list. So you could take those values, put them in a list, and do a search for somebody. Go and say, oh, wait, you wanted this restaurant? Let me look for that restaurant name, and come back and tell the person what was the results of their health inspection. You could actually do that with Python, based on what you've learned in these 2 days, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to pop over to Internet Explorer here, and I want to show you, when I find the right one, here we go, get out of a chat window, and I want to show you how we can actually go search for open data. So if you're looking for interesting data you could potentially use in your code, if you actually just type open data, you will find all kinds of different websites from all over the world. I live in Ottawa, so if I search for Open Data Ottawa, and I search, I'll actually see that the city of Ottawa, where I live, has a special open data website. And if I click on that, it says, oh, well, here's our open data portal, which is all kinds of data that you're welcome to access. And I go, well, that's interesting. What happens if I say, let's get some data? And it says, well, here's all types of different data that I can collect. And they're in different file formats. You can see some of these are XLSX, so this one's an Excel spreadsheet. You may look at this one is CSV. We looked at CSV files yesterday, or not even yesterday, just before the meal, so just a little while ago. So you can get a CSV file that contains all the vehicular access ways, apparently. But water
access ways.
Absolutely, never know when I need those. But planning information, water information, federal governments, provincial governments, it's amazing how much information is out there for open data. One of my personal favorites that I came across recently, Australia has a remarkable collection of open data. And one I found in particular, you can see right here, this tells you about all the animals they have in the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery.
Well,
just in case you needed to know more about the Tasmanian tiger and Tasmanian emu, all the information you need to know about the exhibits at the Tasmanian Museum is right there in open data.
And yeah, I got to tell you, I was up late last night.
Worrying about Tasmanian emus.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure you were.
Yep.
But it's really, just to show you the incredible breadth of information that's out there in open data. And this is information that is free to use. You just go, you can download that file, read that file into your program, and do what you will with it. And this is often used in apps on tablets or even on websites. Python can be used to build back-end code for websites. So you could build a web page, and your web page could say, take the animal name they typed in, go call a program written in Python that will search the list of fauna at the Tasmanian Museum and come back and tell me, yes, we do have that at the Tasmanian Museum. So you'd write a little web page, somebody would type in the animal name, and then you would call a Python program behind the scenes that reads this information from the open data and gives back a result. I'm using Tasmanian Museum, but insert whatever data you found from open data here for your city, your state, your country, your province. And I said it's a real wonderful trend, and this is a powerful, powerful thing.
Yep.
They will be in different file formats. Some of them have CSVs, some of them will be Excel files, so that can cause some fun along the way because you try and just open up an Excel file and read it. In Python, it's going to have a lot of weird extra characters, so you might want to open it in Excel, save it as a CSV file, and then read it into Python. So we'll talk a little bit about file formatting, but you can do it.
Yep.
It's really quite cool. All right. So on that note, let's take a look at how we can actually read a text file. So let's keep it simple to start. Well, the good news is you already know the function you need to use to open a file. It hopefully should look familiar if you were with us when Christopher was helping us in that last module. We use the open function to open up a file, and we specify the name of the file we want to open, and we specify the access mode.
So it's the exact same as we did with write, because we're just opening the file back up, but something tells me you're going to use a different access mode.
Exactly, right, because it's the access mode that determines what the program expects us to do once we have opened the file. So if we specify an access mode of read, then it expects us to be reading the files write.
Yep.
If we are writing to the files. And then there is, it came up in the chat window earlier, there's an R+, which means read and write, or you can also say W+ to say read and write as well. So how does my program know if I'm reading or writing to a file? The access mode. So R for reading a file, W to write to a file, A if I want to append to the existing file content, and B is for binary files. There was a question in the chat window about binary files. Binary data is things like images, audio files, video files, those are stored as binary. It's unusual in Python, the level we're working with here, that you would be reading and writing for binary files, but I just wanted to mention it because if you ever do need to read the contents of an image file, you'd have to use the binary file access mode because they're read quite differently than they are from text files. And as I mentioned, our plus sign or W+ sign will open up as a read or write, so you can do both.
Yep.
All right, so once I've opened the file, how do I actually read the contents? Kind of important.
You know?
Now, here we go.
Details.
Here's one of those wonderful ones. Okay, anybody out in the Q&A, any of our audience want to guess the name of the method we use to read read the file contents?
I think you're trying to give people a hint. By the way, I just want to say that a couple of people love the Tasmanian emus, and somebody from Vancouver says hello.
Oh, hi, Vancouver.
And nobody in the chat window yet.
Yeah, we're just going to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Going to wait a
there we
second.
go. Okay, so I see
what
the R. That's the access
for
mode.
A read?
Yep. So the method would be, there we go. Yeah, now we're getting all sorts of reads coming
Guessing,
through.
yes. Why? What a shocker.
Yep.
Yes, and I do, I joke about this, but I really do appreciate it when the people who are developing a programming language make the function names really intuitive.
Yeah.
So you think, well, maybe there's a method called read. Well, guess what? There's a method called read.
Yep.
So you specify your file and you do a read. What this will actually do is this is actually going to return the entire file contents into one great big string.
Yep.
So when I call the read method, it returns the entire content of the file, every single line you've got in there,
everything inside
and puts
that file.
everything, dumps it all into one big string.
Okay.
So file content is going to contain all of the file.
Somebody said read toasters.
Read toasters. Nice. Somebody was with us yesterday, I can tell. All right, so it returns the entire content of the file. Now, of course, there are definitely times when that's a bit clunky.
Yep.
We were looking at CSV files in the last module, and in that one, you probably want to read it row by row. Give me the first row, give me the second row, and so on. So you can also, if you prefer, use readline. So that's sometimes useful. In particular, where I really love using readline is situations where maybe I have a CSV file and the first row is titles.
Yes.
You'll see that, in Excel spreadsheets, the first row of the spreadsheet is telling you what's in each of the columns. We do the same thing sometimes in CSV files. So when someone opens up our comma-separated variable file, the first row is actually the column headers. And then we have the data. So by doing a read line, I can distinguish between, okay, my first row here is the column headers, and the following rows, as I go through them, I will know are the actual data. So I can distinguish between the two a little more cleanly. So read line, as you might guess, since it's read line, returns one line. So let's do it, because really, you've got to start playing. That's the only way to do this. Practice, practice, practice. And this time I'll remember to maximize my window right away. All right. Okay, so I'm going to just create a file because I need a file to read. So I'm going to do the open containing folder there, and I'm just going to go here and create a new file. Let's just create a new text document. That'll work fine. Called Tasmania.txt, perhaps. Yes, I'm going to learn all about my Tasmanian emu now.
Come to Tasmania.
All right. And then I'm just going to open that file up in Notepad. And in Notepad, I'm going to list that there is the Tasmanian devil, endangered, which is an endangered species. And then we have the Tasmanian emu, which is in fact extinct. And we have the Tasmanian tiger, which sadly is also extinct. And then you have the possum, which I promise you, certainly true in Australia, I'm guessing true in Tasmania as well, is common. That's kind of like squirrels, raccoons, there's possums everywhere off that way. And I'm assuming it's true in Tasmania. Might not be, it's an island, but it gives me something to start with.
We'll go with it.
All right, so I have some data in a file, and now I want to write a program that's going to read that content.
Okay.
All right, so I'll leave that file over here so we can kind of remember what it was doing. So what I need to do first is I'm going to basically open the file first. So file, I'm just trying to think of a good name for my variable. I'm just going to call it my file. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling particularly original. That's terrible, isn't it? All right, it's bugging you.
Just
all right.
call it file.
Animal file. All right, animal file equals...
Lowercase a.
Thank you. Doesn't have to be. It won't give you an error.
Yeah, but you know,
we are trying to be consistent in the way we're doing our casing, camel casing versus Pascal casing. We talked about that yesterday when we did variables. And that is equal to open, and we have to specify the file name. And I'm just going to be different from what we did last module, I'm going to hard code the file name this time.
Sure. Yep.
And I called it, what did I call it? Tasmania.txt. Tasmania.txt. And then I have to specify my access mode, and I am going to be reading this file. So I'm going to specify the R. So first of all, I'm going to open my file. And then I'm going, let's try first of all, just say all file contents equals animal file dot read.
Okay.
And then if I simply print all file content, and I've done it again, I've gone and made that uppercase, try to be consistent. And if I print all file contents to the screen, we should see the list of all the different animals that were in that file displayed up on the screen.
Let's see it.
So we run, and oh, it can't find my file tasmania.txt. I wonder if
Might have saved it to the right spot.
or it might be .txt.txt. You know how it does that on you once in a blue moon? Let me go to my open containing folder here, double check the file name. Open the containing folder. It is there.
Yeah, no, it is. It's got exactly.
Exactly.
That, yeah.
I'm going to say what I want to show you what happened to me here is view the file name extensions, and because of the way I created it, and when Notepad automatically puts on a .txt extension, so when I typed in a file name of tasmania.txt, it made it .txt.txt. Luckily, I've hit that error before, as you can tell. I told you, the more mistakes you make, the better you get at finding them. So that's probably why it failed.
Yep.
All right, so the file name was off.
Take two.
Take two. And there we go. Perfect. There is my output window displaying all the contents of the file. So boom, already I have the ability to just get all the contents of my file read in.
Yep.
Boom. Now let's try reading a single line at a time. So we're just going to modify this. So this is going to be read all file contents. So that would be one option, and I'm going to comment that code out using my Control-K, Control-C. And this time I'm going to do a first animal equals animal file dot read line. So this time I'm just reading the first line, and then I'm just going to print that value, first animal, on the screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the first two rows. I think some of you can guess on if I wanted to read all the rows, I might need a loop. So we will get to that, but just to start, keep it simple to start. All right, so now I read the first line, put that into a variable called first animal, and the second line, put that into a variable called second animal. I run, and sure enough, I see the first two rows from the file printed out on the screen. Success, already making some good progress.
All right, I like it.
Okay, let's go back and learn something else. Let's play some more. One of the most common file formats you do end up reading are CSV files.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we have
Like
actually,
the file you just created.
yeah, the file I created was actually a CSV file. I wasn't even thinking about it. It's just so intuitive and so common. A lot of the open data files you find, you will often find CSV files or Excel files, which you could save as CSV files. One of the great things is you aren't going to be the first person to try and read a CSV file, and so many other people have to read CSV